You are listening to It's Midnight Somewhere with DJs Mistress McCutcheon and The Wasteland.
It's midnight somewhere. It's midnight. It's midnight somewhere. It's midnight.
Hi, this is Mistress McCutcheon coming to you from downtown Toronto, accompanied by my partner in crime, the DJ known as The Wasteland.
Who's coming to you from also downtown Toronto, but also underground in downtown Toronto.
In the secret lair.
In the secret
basement apartment.
Yeah, because I'm a troll and I live in a cave.
Anyway, I'm on my second beer. I've stocked up because we are about to go into lockdown officially this week. What that really means here in Toronto is that we're kind of returning to phase one, and a bunch of services and places are going to be closed. Everything's going to be delivery or curbside pickup. And it hasn't really changed my life at all because my privileged ass is still working from home. And here we are recording a podcast.
Yeah, it doesn't really change mine either because we're doing curbside drop-off for the people who know where I work. And for everybody else, I'm not putting that on the internet. I'm sorry.
Valid. So before we get into today's topic, I wanted to address a couple of bands that we hadn't brought up in the last podcast since we had been talking about Chicago, because we took a second look and thought, oh, fuck, we didn't include this, and this. How silly of us.
So the first one, and I think it was actually our friend Heather asked during one of our live streams, who is this? Where are they from? And my answer was, oh, fuck, they're from Chicago, was Saltillo.
Yes. Saltillo has 2 albums out. The most recent one is called Monocyte. It came out, I believe, in 2012. They're not on Bandcamp, but you can find them on Storming the Bass. From Chicago. And do you want to describe what they sound like?
It's really hard to describe what they sound like. They have a lot of stringed instruments, atmospheric, like almost ambient elements going on in there. I don't know. They have a very unique sound, is the way I would put it. I only got them into a set list because we started a new pop-up show called Esoterica, for those who didn't see us give you a half-hour heads up, where we're playing more down-tempo or ethereal or ambient pieces. And Saltillo rose to the top of the list as something that's definitely not a club banger, but is good quality music that I wanted to put out into the world for people who hadn't heard it.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It's not something that easily fits into a specific genre, but there are some really fantastic tracks on both of the albums, and I highly, highly recommend checking them out. The other project from the same man who brings you Saltillo that I would recommend is Sunday Munich. Sunday Munich also has 2 albums available. The latest one came out in 2000, and it's sort of a trip hop meets Cocteau Twins feel, and they do a really lovely cover of Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here that I really, really like. Again, take a look for them on Discogs. I think if you're into that sort of thing, trip hop, then yeah, you'll probably dig Sunday Munich as well. So those are two projects from the same source that based out of Chicago. The other band I wanted to bring up that's also from Chicago is Panic Priest, which I was like, how do we not mention Panic Priest? Their latest album came out in May of this year, and it's called Second Seduction. And one of the first singles that came out was called Lonely City, which they have a very charming video for that was created very quarantine style, where they've got isolated folks dancing in their spaces. And it's really, really cool.
All right. So today's topic will be related genres that kind of exist on the edges of goth industrial, that you may have heard of, you may have heard some elements of here or there. You might even be a fan of some of them, and that would be cool. If not, maybe we could help you learn a thing.
Yeah, because there's a lot of music that is definitely goth adjacent, varying bands that could be the gateway into what is goth music, which again, what is goth, what is not goth has been a debate for the times and will probably be forever debated on the internet by everyone forever and ever and ever and ever. But I think a good starting point as far as gateway music and goth adjacent sort of music, not necessarily goth, but stuff that goths definitely like. Where would we be without 80s new wave?
Yep. I mean, you look at 80s new wave, and not only do you have some of the mainstays that you will still hear in most goth clubs with Depeche Mode and Soft Cell, but you also, in that, you get every once in a while The Cure creeps in with a hit. You got Duran, and then all those one-hit wonders of the 80s that had such great songs and probably had really great albums. It's just there's so many of them. To dig into all of that would take ages.
Yeah. It's funny because I know that my early clubbing times in New York would start at the Pyramid, and the Pyramid had a Thursday night. I don't know if it was still going before the pandemic, but I will put money on it that it probably was. But their Thursday nights was an 80s new wave night, and that's where you would hear a lot of the regular 80s one-hit wonders. You'd hear, of course, like Flock of Seagulls. You'd hear Soft Cell. You'd hear Heaven 17, which are not goth bands, but goths have a love of nostalgia, and it just really works, and it's fun to dance to.
But they also played some newer synth pop too at that night. They would play Wolfsheim and things of that nature, and they worked it together because realistically, Wolfsheim draw and one for, you know, another one really draw heavily on the same dynamic that Depeche Mode had. So you don't get them without that. So that synth pop crossover happens there, and they would play a little bit of everything because I used to go to the same night every week for like 3 years.
Yeah, it was a night that you could depend on a Thursday night if you wanted to get out and go dancing and have cheap drinks and all that jazz. It was a lot of fun. I will fondly look at the Pyramid for that for sure.
Yeah, if they're still running that when this is over, we should go down.
I also have a terrible memory of the Pyramid because I remember in my foolish youth trying to keep up with the boys in drinking. It's never a good idea to keep up.
No.
Never feel pressured to do more than you think you can handle. But when you're young and stupid, that's what you do. And then you end up christening an entire club in your vomit and feeling like garbage for the following week. So I will always also associate that with the Pyramid just because you don't keep up with the guys. It's just a bad idea.
See, I thought you were going to tell the story where you ran into the pole.
That's Jesus. That's another one. Fuck. Me and the Pyramid, man.
You also christened it in your blood. So I think when you die, they can raise you there now.
Oh, Jesus. There's going to be a seance at the Pyramid because the blood and vomit of me has been present on that site. And that's where the seance is going to be.
There you go.
Oh. Yeah, I had 4 stitches in my eyebrow.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
So
I had an awesome black eye. Everybody thought I got beaten up. It was crazy. What song do we want to play that will exemplify this time period and this particular genre?
Ooh, new wave. I don't want to play something that's tired. I don't want to play Tainted Love. I don't want to play any of that. What? You got one?
I do have a suggestion because again, in this flavor where it's new wave, maybe the lyrics are a little bit melancholic, but the music is still fun and still good to dance to. And it's a contemporary of Depeche Mode. I would suggest Camouflage.
Yes.
And the song that I'm going to suggest is not normally the big hit would be The Great Commandment, which there's a cover floating around somewhere of The Great Commandment that I walked into a shop in Montreal one day and thought, holy shit, this is a cover of The Great Commandment by Camouflage. And I can't remember what the band is right now, but from Camouflage, what I am going to recommend is One Fine Day, because I think we could use that song right now.
So another genre that we'd like to talk about, because I think we touched on it a little bit at the end of the Chicago episode, is actually shoegaze. Something we both listen to. Laura's more of a fan of it than I am, mostly because, as I said to her offline last week, I really like it. I had a friend who really liked it in high school. I haven't spent money on it, and I can't afford to get into a new genre right now. So I will listen to whatever anybody else will put on for me, which is great with live streams online. So, but shoegaze to me it's got really uplifting elements in it, but it's still, again, like 80s new wave, melancholic at points in the lyrics, and you know, it's not always super bouncy, but it's not always super ooh. I don't know how else to describe it, because I'm not as well versed in this as you.
Well, as far as shoegaze goes, there's a couple of really prime examples. Off the top of my head, I think of My Bloody Valentine and I think of Slowdive. And the funny thing with shoegaze and where its name even comes from really stems from The Cure and from Cocteau Twins, because it's got that really fuzzed out guitar feeling, but it's also sort of the anti-rock star where your head is down and you're looking at your shoes and playing. And it's also got elements of creating sort of this wall of guitar noise like Jesus and Mary Chain. So I can see where the appeal to a goth crowd would be. And it's sort of that, it's still holding on to that sort of melancholic, sort of darker feeling, but it's not goth.
What would you play from that? That's not tired and worn out. What would you put in here?
Oof, that's a good question.
Because I know when I checked out Shimmer, there were some songs that I really liked that they named the bands, but I'll be honest, like I was just like, nope, don't do it. You have 100 things sitting in your Bandcamp wish list as it is right now. Don't go into a whole new genre again.
Dangerous.
So I left my phone on the couch away from me and kept playing video games. So you pick.
No, that's fair. I'm really partial to Slowdive's Souvlaki album. And I think there was a period of time where I listened to that album for a good 6 months straight. But I feel like throwing in Slowdive right here is a little, it's very on the nose. So I'd rather go with a newer example. And it's definitely something that I've discovered through another live stream, and it was through Shimmer. And it comes to us from Dublin, Ireland, actually. And the name of the band is called Bitch Falcon, which I thought, okay, odd name, whatevs. But they're available on Bandcamp. The album is called Staring at Clocks, and the track that I'd like to drop in here is called Turn to Gold. If we're going to bring up shoegaze, we also have to bring up dream pop. Dream pop is kind of more related to shoegaze as a genre, except that it's less about that fuzzed out guitar and that feeling. It's dreamy, it's poppy, it's sort of sweet and girly. But again, I think there's a lot of dream pop that really captures that very melancholic feeling. And one of the examples that really stands out in my mind is there was a record label based out of Brighton in the UK called Sarah Records that had a lot of different examples of dream pop bands. They were a label that was active from somewhere in the mid 80s till about 1995 or so. But there are a lot of really great examples of dream pop there. And again, how you would characterize the sound is just sort of that very sweet, poppy, but it's not dancey, but it's not shoegaze either. And overall, I think it could have quite a lot of appeal for someone who's interested in something very goth adjacent.
Another example I would like to cite is a band from the Bay Area known as Them or Us 2, which was a band. They've really only had one album. They had a live session that also came out. The primary composer was Cash Askew, who died in the ghost ship fire back a few years ago, when that whole tragedy happened. The surviving member, Kennedy Ashland, has their own project called SRSQ or SearSQ. Also really good, but it's a little pulls away a little bit from the dream pop element. But I really recommend that you check out their one and only album called Remain. It is a fantastic example of dream pop and probably the only album in the genre I own. But it's really, really, really good and really worth checking out. I'd like to drop in a track here now. My favorite, the one that pulled me in for the album. Now, the whole album is good. There's a couple really good songs that I'm kind of debating what to put on, but the one that got me in is the first track called Eudamonia.
Nice.
So long as you're
Before we move on with the next genre that we want to talk about, the other recommendation that I really want to make in regards to sort of shoegaze and ethereal and sort of dream pop, I really want to mention there's a 2 CD compilation called Splashed with Many a Speck that came out on Dewdrops Records in 1997. You can find that one on Discogs, and I would highly recommend diving into that if this is a genre that interests you, because then you can get some variety on a bunch of different bands. There's some Curtain Society and Faith and Disease and Cocteau Twins and Lanterna on it. So if this is your jam, I think compilations are a really great way to start so that you can investigate a lot of different kinds of bands. So I had to give that a mention. Where do we want to go from here? So we've talked about 80s new wave as well as shoegaze and dream pop. So from here,
I think we get noisier because when we were putting this together, it really felt like you had 3 really light and airy ones that were fun. And then I came in and I was like, but what if I just dropped a hammer on the floor? And that's what some of this might sound like. One of the things that we covered previously when we had Derek Rush on is obviously noise and the broader aspect of that. And we brought him on because noise is definitely on the outskirts of what goth and industrial is. But what came into the fold for a bit there, at least in the mid-aughts, was rhythmic and power noise. I think we all, at this point, if you were around at that time, you've been to some show where sparks were flying over your head, because if you didn't, you were probably like me and lived in a part of the world where those bands didn't tour. Thank you, South Texas. Anyway, but yeah, like we discussed noise with Derek, so I don't really want to get back into that and rehash that because that was a very interesting episode to listen to on its own. But I think over the years, rhythmic noise has really progressed itself with bands like ESA and Varden Sphere and This Morning and Akama Sots. Akama Sots we've played, and we've played ESA. We featured them on one of our new Bandcamp episodes. They're doing a lot different things. It's not just guys banging on beer kegs anymore. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just when you're doing it for 10 years, it might get old. Unless you're Neubauten, then you can do whatever the fuck you want.
By the way, Neubauten is coming out with new material December 4th. New album is coming. I saw that on their Instagram and got very excited. So that's definitely something to put on your calendar, because December 4th is also the next Bandcamp Friday.
Nice.
So it's a good day for buying music.
Mark your calendars, because that'll also be a good day to catch Prophecy live. December 4th.
That's right.
Sorry, shameless self-promotion.
Hey, it's got to happen.
But yeah, the most interesting aspect that came out of rhythmic noise for me has been the stuff that leans into the tribal feel, because it's something that really speaks to me on like a primal level, and it's more interesting again than somebody kicking a beer can for an hour and a half on a stage, because many of the bands will use analog instruments. Varden Sphere uses a lot of different percussion on stage, and so does This Morning, which are probably 2 of my more favorite bands. But then you have more purely electronic bands like what Stoneburner's doing and Akama Sots. They're a little less organic and more electronic, but they still have that raw energy.
Is there an example of a track that you'd like to drop in here?
So yes, I do have an example. I'm going to go a little bit outside of the bands that I mentioned, which if you know anything about this genre, or even if you've kind of been close enough to it, or you've been at a night where they're going to play some overlap with that, you've probably heard of all the bands I've mentioned. So I would like to play a track from a group called Tribal AD. This is a track called La Nicotina, and it's a remix by Na-Hag.
So speaking on the tribal tip, that brings to mind World Fusion. And the starting point from there would be Dead Can Dance's first album, which is a self-titled album that came out in 1984 and was certainly embraced by a lot of goths because it embodied a lot of dark elements and also a lot of world instruments and introduced folks into things that were maybe not so known or expected at the time, hearing dulcimer, hearing different types of drumming and stuff like that. So I would include World Fusion as a goth adjacent genre to a certain degree, because then there are certainly other bands that take from that sort of pool that Dead Can Dance has already swam through. I know that a lot of folks compare the Indian-born Iranian singer Azam Ali. She sounds a lot like Lisa Gerrard, but she definitely has her own thing going on. She's been involved in a band called Vas, and more recently a band called Niaz, which is sort of a Persian Indian fusion, which a lot of folks I think will really appreciate and enjoy. And I feel that between Dead Can Dance and Niaz, there's certainly a place for that style of music, because also within that style of music, you could definitely connect the dots between that music and goth belly dancers. And a lot of that music kind of comes into play, because then you get music like Maduro and Blind Divine. There was a really fantastic compilation that came out several years ago called Strange Flesh. And it's got various bands on it, from Knossos to Maduro to Angels of Venice to The Shroud. Again, it sort of fits in with the whole goth belly dance aesthetic, because this could be a whole other topic that I don't want to get into, but I'll lightly touch on here. In my opinion, goth belly dance is a theme, not a style of belly dance, because goth belly dance could be based off of traditional style Egyptian, Middle Eastern belly dance. And it can also be based off of what's called fusion belly dance, where it takes in elements of hip hop dance and other styles, like classical Indian, as well as North African and Middle Eastern dances. But I don't want to get all involved in that right now on this podcast, because we're just talking about the music. But Strange Flesh has got a lot of really interesting tracks on it that, again, if this is something that you are interested in exploring further, I think you'll really appreciate that compilation. Azam Ali, Niaz, early Dead Can Dance is a lot darker, but then the more recent Dead Can Dance albums, you definitely have a very wide range of world fusion going on. So I think that would qualify itself as a goth adjacent genre. As far as a song pick here, I'm going to go with Solace, and here's Blood Oil Gold.
All right. Well, you leaned into a little bit and mentioned hip hop, so I wanted to call out. There's a growing trend right now with industrial hip hop. We did touch on that also with one of our new song episodes when we dropped in clipping at the end. Aside from clipping, there's a couple of other acts. One out of Montreal called Backwash, which it's one word with an X in between. So I hope I'm saying that right because I don't speak French. I don't think that's French, but I'm gonna roll with that. The other act that I really like, and I actually saw open for 3 Teeth, is Horror. Which, if you're gonna try to look it up on Bandcamp, it is spelt HO9909. The O's are letter O. They even gave a whole spiel when I saw them open for 3 Teeth, how it is horror and not Ho 9909, which is what somebody called them. It was kind of funny.
Ho 9909.
They're actually from Newark, New Jersey. And one of the very interesting things that I like about this new developing subgenre is it is largely people of color. Clipping is David Diggs and the other 2 guys that do all the music, whose names I always forget. But David is always front and center as a black man, and Horror is 2 black men, and Backwash is 1 black, I'm going to say person, because I'm not sure their pronouns, and the way they present seems to go back and forth. So I don't want to make that. I don't want to screw that up. But for Horror, I would really, the song that I've always liked is called Street Power. One of the other interesting things about them is not only are they drawing on industrial influences and hip hop influences, but they draw on a lot of punk. So this song also has that going on in there. And it's really what, like, all the music you would have gotten in an inner city all balled into one and thrown into a song. So I'd like to put that in here.
Look into my eyes. Tell me what you see. Look into my eyes. You ain't no better than me. You ain't never hustled these streets. You ain't never thought in these streets. Kill for power, earn your stripes, please. Nobody just calls the police. Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. We gon' kill them dead. Give fuck about what? No time for the weak, gonna show survive. My man get paid, they 25. Savage red, I'm gonna be dead. Don't try to send me, you can't say shit. Family first, they kill the rich. Cities burning up in flames. Bullets flying, I know that. You're dead, 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 dead. Oh. Death before dishonor. I don't believe in no karma. When retaliation strikes hard, this evil cutting through armor. Got me running through this alleyway, jumping fist to fist. Nobody, when this time strikes, we gon' crash a bitch. Look into my eyes. Tell me what you see. Look into my eyes. You ain't no better than me. Give a fuck about what? No time for the weak, gonna show survive. My man get paid, they 25. Savage red, I'm gonna be dead. Don't try to save me, you can't save shit. Family first, they kill the rich. City burning up in flames. Bullets fly, they have no name. You're dead, 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 dead. Oh.
Now these are freaks that you're watching here.
No time for the weak, gonna show survive.
day, we all believe in something. We all believe in a creator, whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God or whatever this shit is, but you are a human being. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could be like, he could let this wheel go right now. God ain't gonna fucking grab the wheel and take us back home. Nigga, we gonna crash.
And then the last one, because I can't let it go without mentioning it, and especially if you're going to talk about inner cities, we got to go back to the man himself, Alec Empire. Digital Hardcore Recordings. Digital Hardcore was the record label didn't last forever. Obviously, it didn't even make it out of the 90s, but there are a couple of bands I've seen lately call themselves Digital Hardcore, including Chrysalide out of Paris, I believe. They're French. Again, I don't speak French, so everything's Paris. I'm terrible.
Don't tell that to the Quebecois.
No, then it's all Montreal, right?
Right.
I'm awful. Actually, the one time I went to Montreal, they were all like, "You're from Toronto, you don't speak French?" And I'm like, "No, I'm American." They were like, "Oh," and all of a sudden, and I was already better than all the Torontonians there that didn't speak French.
Oh,
it's
shit.
like they felt bad for me. Oh, you're American. You're stupid, but you're fun.
Right.
Anyway, digital hardcore. So if you're not sure why I say, speaking of an inner city and Alec Empire formed Atari Teenage Riot, late 80s, early 90s. It draws on a lot of different elements of techno, breakbeats, Rotterdam style, and it definitely has guitars and an industrial influence as well. And it is true protest music, like industrial was at its roots. For those who don't know, Alec Empire grew up 2 blocks from the Berlin Wall. That's where his childhood was spent. Wow. Yeah, so he's got a real strong political message in a lot of his music. The trick with this is, for podcast purposes, trying to put on any of the classic tracks. A lot of them were produced like electronic versions of punk songs. They all sound like they were in a garage. So... But having gone through my catalog a bit today of ATR, the one song that they produced recently, or more recently, was in 2010. It's a track called Activate, which really captures the fervor of those original tracks. And I'd like to drop that in here.
If they would tear your world apart, would you intervene? Music is a weapon, sounds like a threat. Let the bass terrorize, there's no turning back! In your mind, put it in your head. Confrontation! The situation will escalate!
It's any way you want, it's any way you do. This is far from over yet, don't let them play you.
As you're in the street, dies a slow death. The last road record, save your breath. No lessons learned yet, the death of this gets. Neck on dirt, left, burning fish nets. Are you ready?
Activate!
Control, too much government control. Government control, too much government control.
Earthquakes, I'm burning up. The banks rob you, collect it up, get back. I'll fuck you up, build up, new resistance, stir it up. Crack attacks, plane hijacks, terror on earth, the big payback. What you gotta do when we come for you? Cops corrupt, government's bankrupt.
music. And you know it!
Trying to find a dance before darkness comes.
Did it ever occur to you to question what you were told?
Activate! 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 Activate!
So we wanted to bring up varying genres that are goth adjacent, not just to help expand your music collection, but just to sort of discuss these varying themes within the music that express melancholy and darkness and that kind of fit in where your interests may lie, but aren't necessarily goth. Because there's definitely very clear boundaries as far as like what's industrial, what's goth rock and stuff like that. And we can get really into splintering varying genres and it gets to be a little bit of hair splitting at some point because you can listen to stuff and go, well, is this death rock? Is this goth rock? Is this horror punk? Is this industrial? Is this more electro over industrial? Or is this dark techno? And it gets to be... it starts to get a little complicated.
It's one of the reasons why I don't really adhere to a lot of genres when we do prophecy, because I want to make it interesting. And I think anybody who's sat through one of my Psalms nights, I don't stick with one sound for more than like 3 or 4 songs in a row.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I mean, I didn't even bring up Project Records because then in talking about ethereal, we started Esoterica as sort of a pop-up in the middle of the afternoon to make it a non-dance party and kind of play some of the more mellow and quieter stuff out of our collection since Prophecy is a dance party. And we were like, well, what kind of music do we want to put out and feature and share that isn't necessarily something that's going to get asses wiggling on a dance floor, but something that you want to just sit back and listen to and enjoy. But there's also the sort of shoehorning in genres that I'm not a fan of.
Let it go.
Because
come on, let it out. I know you want to. Just say it. Just say it.
I have to bring up steampunk. I have to bring up steampunk because I want to make it very clear that steampunk is not a music genre. I think folks are trying too hard to force it into one, but it's not. While I appreciate the aesthetic of steampunk because I am a huge fan of Victorian ephemera, steampunk is romanticizing an era that never existed, and it pulls in scientific, sort of these sci-fi elements, and it brings in fiction from H.P. Lovecraft and, of course, Jules Verne and all that jazz. But it isn't a music genre. And I really, really have a bone to pick because folks, I think, are trying too hard to force it to be one, and it doesn't really work.
I would agree with that. You know, they're just, I can't, I don't even know where to start. It's a really interesting fashion genre for the people who do it well. It's really easy to do it poorly, but, you know, it's a fashion genre to me, and that's it. And
the music influences style. It's not really the other way around.
Right. I have one I want to throw in. I have a genre I want to throw in because we live in Toronto, and this just came to mind as you were talking about steampunk. And there's one thing I hear very often at goth in industrial clubs, and I'm always like, what the fuck? And that is, nu metal is not goth.
Nu metal isn't goth.
Nu metal isn't goth. So I don't understand why every time I go out, it's like, okay, yeah, you know what? I actually like some nu metal bands. I like Tool. I like the Deftones. I like some of that stuff. I don't want to pay to go to a goth industrial night and hear Tool again. Ever. ever.
Yeah, I mean, I like when I can go to a night and there's a mix of genres. That's really fun. But I want to know. Like, I want an accurate advertisement of the night I am paying to get into. Because, like, if I'm going to a night that is being advertised as a goth rock, death rock night, that's what my expectations are set as. That's what I'm expecting to hear.
Yep.
If I'm going to an Italo disco night, that's what I'm expecting to hear.
Yep.
I like when I go to a party that can have some variety. I mean, I'm not so stuck on like, oh, it can only be this and that's it. Like, I like having some variety, and I like being surprised by, oh shit, this is really good.
Yep.
Like, one of the songs that I threw in my set the other week, I was getting all death rock up in here, and then I threw on a Flock of Seagulls song. I just sneaked it right in, and people went, holy shit, is this a Flock of Seagulls song? Because a Flock of Seagulls is always known as a one-hit wonder band, but I'm sorry, you really need to listen to their catalog.
Their catalog is pretty deep. Their catalog is pretty deep.
There's far more than I ran. There is far more. So I think that requires a bit more digging if that's your impression of Flock of Seagulls. And I like being surprised when something really works in a night, it works. But I'm not a fan of metal. So anytime I hear metal, my ears are going to close up and just be like, nope.
That's part of why we have always marketed Prophecy as a dark dance party, because we kind of hit all the bases and we stay within that bounds. I mean, even the other night, okay, at the last Psalms, I played a dubstep remix of a Prodigy song, but it worked and it was a darker song. It
worked and people fucking loved it.
Yeah, people went crazy.
People are really happy about it. And, and that's really what it comes down to is it's tough as a DJ DJing on Twitch right now, because when you're DJing in a club setting, you need to be able to read the room and know, oh, okay, is this what people want? Because to a degree, you have some ego as a DJ and you're like, this is the music I want to share. But you need to read the room so that your audience is happy. Because if you're keeping them on the dance floor, then they're having a good time. But then you need to know when to give them a break so they can go hit the bar and keep drinking, because that's how you get paid. But yeah, when shit works, sometimes it just fucking works. And you can read it on people. When you're on Twitch, it's hard to read the room because you just have to see what's going on in the chat. And people really got a kick out of it. And we're like, holy shit, this is great. And it worked.
It did, because of where I put it. Like, it just went from one song right into it. Like, nobody expected it. And I followed it up with the No Sleep Till Brooklyn from Northbourne, who's the former keyboard player, the live keyboard player from Icon of Coil. Can't find his stuff anywhere anymore. Can't even tag him on Facebook. But he had that track on a random comp I have, and haven't heard from him since. And that comp, I think, came out in like 2011? 12. So yeah, so I was like, yeah, I want to play that, and I'll play the Prodigy one. And then we got out of any kind of dubsteppy soundy stuff, because there's just very, very short attention span for that I have.
That is fair. Dubstep had a time and a place, and that time is over.
And that place was the garbage.
Touche.
All right. Are we gonna wrap it up now? Are we wrapping up?
Yeah, I think to sum up this whole episode, I wanted to just say that, here we are discussing music, and I hope folks can feel free to explore what they like, because if you like something, fucking like it. And that's cool. And I think there's just so much music out there. It's really difficult to know what to look for and how you source your music. Because that's why we listen to varying DJs and their streams, and we are constantly looking up stuff on Bandcamp and Discogs and all sorts of different sources, because we want to know and we want to consume all the music, because it's really a lifesaver, and music is our lifeblood. And especially in times like this, it can bring you to another place, and it just feels really good. I mean, I think we're both definitely addicts of music. This is our addiction and our problem, and we've been spending a lot of fucking money on music in this time, and we're happy to share it and discuss what we like, what we don't like, and if you like our taste and you're interested in hearing some other recommendations, that's what we're here for. We're here for you, and if you don't like our taste, then at least you know. And whatever, you can go fuck yourself.
How have you made it this far into a podcast if you don't like what we're playing? Beyond that, if you could think of something we might like that we haven't touched on at all, definitely drop us an email at it's midnight somewhere podcast at gmail.com. If you think we're dead wrong about steampunk, we invite you to try and change our minds. Probably won't work.
Oh, fight me on it. Fight me.
You might have to fight Laura. She's been practicing more than I have lately, so she's probably the tougher one to take right now. She's in shape and I'm A shape.
But yeah, if you're digging what we do and you want to make another recommendation or something we may have missed, we are also on Facebook under It's Midnight Somewhere. Oh, I've just been handed a note from our producer. As of this recording, since we're recording on Sunday night and this podcast is about to go out, speaking of music that isn't goth, but stuff that goths enjoy, the goddess, the Icelandic goddess, Björk, it is her birthday today. She's 55 years old. And Björk is a fucking genius. Big fan of her music. She has a live stream broadcast coming up in January that is a ticketed event online, and she is going to be performing with an orchestra in Iceland.
Ooh.
If you're a fan of Björk, you're going to want to investigate that. Tickets are really reasonable. I think they're like £15, which is like 25 Canadian or something.
I was going to say that's kind of heavy.
£15. Ha ha ha. All right, a shape. Let's wrap this fucking thing up. So, because I've been drinking and now I need to eat some food. But many thank yous to Robin Bright, who has written our theme music, to Marion Green, who's designed our logo and our artwork that you can find on stickers. If you want a sticker, go to morbidoutlook.com/sticker and you can get some there. And many, many thanks to our producer, Justin Minister, who makes us sound good when we act like a bunch of fucking fools, and which is frequent.
And he also deals with all the shenanigans we pull when we're offline.
He puts up with a lot of stuff for no dollars. So thank you, Justin. That wraps it up until next time.
It's midnight somewhere. It's midnight. It's midnight somewhere. It's midnight.
This podcast was almost called I Don't Want to Pay to Go to a Goth Industrial Night and Hear Tool Again. Ever.